We're going to have a conversation with a journalist today, with a professional journalist. This should last about an hour, and then if we still have a little bit of remaining time, we can have a little bit of a follow-up conversation to what we were discussing on Tuesday, and some of the things we will have shared with Pari as well. As always, you're really invited to participate. I see some of the names here that have been very active since the beginning of this course, so I hope you won't hesitate to take the floor or put any type of questions in the chat. So today we're joined by a very good friend and excellent journalist who is originally from India. So Pari Saikia is an investigative journalist who has specialized over time on issues related to migration, labor migration, issues related to labor exploitation in the context of migration. She'll tell us a little bit about her journey, why she has dedicated to focus on this, I would say, rather complex form of journalism. And I think, Pari, you can share a little bit your personal story, your personal experience, why you came to this topic. We're going to be discussing kind of two main issues. Obviously, get a little bit familiar with the work that Pari has done and see how that can be, instructive for all of us in terms of approaching this topic. And then I've asked Pari to give us some insights on two things. The first one is working with vulnerable sources. So you can imagine when we're talking about human trafficking, especially human trafficking for the purpose of labor exploitation, in the context of India, for example, that can lead you to be in contact with very, very vulnerable individuals. Maybe children, maybe people that are illiterate or suffer extreme poverty, or suffer some form of social stigma or social exclusion. And so the journalist reporting on these issues has a very big kind of contradiction between the willingness to protect those individuals and the desire to share that story, maybe with the widest audience possible, so as to be able to support these survivors of abuse, or prevent future similar abuses to other people. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Also, trying to understand how to engage with these vulnerable sources and see how Pari is going about that. The second interesting thing is that Pari is part of a growing group of journalists that are increasingly reporting labor migration on a cross-border collaborative approach. So there's a number of reasons why this trend is growing. Some of you may have read or seen stories recently that have been written by more than one person, often across what we call a corridor. So maybe one person reporting from the country of origin and one person reporting from the country of destination. As I was saying, there's a lot of reason why this trend is growing. One of them is that it's more and more easy to access this type of reporting. And also because to some extent, it's more and more difficult sometimes for some journalists to be able to cover the whole corridor by themselves for financial, sometimes security, or sometimes administrative reasons. They have barriers to travel or to access the sources. So that's the second topic we're going to talk about, because Pari is, one of the leading figures right now in the field of investigative cross-border journalism. And it's really interesting to hear from her experience, which can inform both the journalists in the room, but also the communicators, because this idea of communicating or reporting across border is really something that a lot of us can do. Okay. Maybe first off, Pari, before I share your presentation and we listen to you, I'd like to go back to this, maybe just to get to know you a little better. If you can tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, also because you're from a specific region in India that is maybe interesting to get familiar with. And also the second question would be how you came across this issue of labor migration and why you basically decided to kind of dedicate a lot of your work on this.
Thank you, Charles, so much for this complimenting words. And I'm actually not so much used to all of it. But yes, I think I would not like to call myself the leading journalist, but a journalist. I think I'm humble, and thank you so much for this introduction. I hope everyone is having a good time. It's early in the morning, I know, and it's quite cold in some of the regions. So I hope this presentation and the talk that we're going to have together will be of some use or helpful to you. Talking about my work, so okay, as you know, my name is Pari Saikia, and I actually come from northeastern part of India. It's a state called Assam. So Assam touches borders with Bhutan, and we are a region of combined of seven sisters and one brother. That's how we are known as the northeastern region, and we touches borders with not only with Bhutan but with Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and yes, and China as well. So our region is quite complex, and we have porous borders, and which actually lead to cross-border trafficking often and frequently. And Assam is one of the hotbed of trafficking. And while growing up, I saw the labor exploitation especially among children, and then we have cases like child brides, which eventually lead to trafficking for organs or for sexual exploitations. And seeing all those factors, issues while growing up actually pushed me somewhere, motivated me to take up human trafficking as a bit. And from where I come, in India, despite India the source destination transit country for human trafficking, we do not have a bit called human trafficking, which is quite I think shameful. And every time we try to report on trafficking or migration issue, it's treated as any other small petty crime issue. It's been a lot of struggle for us, journalists covering trafficking or migration. It's been more than 10 years that I have been trying to put my efforts to cover trafficking from different angles. I did cover issues of Rohingya. We currently we're looking into the forced migration, especially among the community of Punjab, which is a northern state in India. So it all started 10 years ago, and my biggest investigation was which actually is very close to my heart, was about bride trafficking of Rohingya women, which we started in 2018. And during that entire process, I realized that it was a one-person investigation, which took me more than 2 years. I worked as an undercover between India and Bangladesh, trying to find those survivors and victims who were trafficked from Myanmar and Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, Rohingya refugee settlements, from there all the way to India, and sold as brides to people who are not being able to find brides locally because of financial constraint, because some of them are disabled, they have disabilities, or they are widower, or for different factors. And so that investigation led to many more scope. And since then we have been covering trafficking and migration one after another, and every story has a connection with one another. Like one part lead to second, and the second leading to the third. And but currently at the moment, as Charles already mentioned, I am working in collaboration with many journalists, because I realized during the first investigation, during my bride trafficking story, that it's a hell lot of a work if to do investigation like this. It's always better to have more than one people, especially journalists or researchers or NGO people, or or many more people to come out to do an investigation. And I think that help you to do even better work, bring out better reports, and put less trauma on the reporting, because we often forget that all those stories leave trauma to a journalist, and which we never talk in the newsroom, or we never address. And post reporting trauma needs to be addressed, which I highly believe. And so this is how we started. Charles, I think this much background is enough, right?
Yeah, it's great. So, and maybe so just to go back a little bit to your presentation. So this is the first story you were referring to, actually, the Rohingya brides. I'm going to share the link for everyone to be able to look at in the so that was really kind of your first I mean, a very strong experience looking at this topic. In this case, as you mentioned, not necessarily migration for the purpose of labor exploitation, even though behind forced marriage there is often, the idea that women are forced into some form of work as well. But that is really the first story, comprehensive story that you did on the topic, right?
Yes, actually, there is a very, there is a, information which we could not address while doing the investigation. It's that is all those women, most women that we interviewed, the Rohingya women that we've interviewed, were trafficked from Myanmar or Bangladesh to India. They were not only sold as brides, as wives to this man, but also to do the labor work which local people would not do. Okay, and which was not addressed. So all the women, most women that we interviewed, they had the same thing to share with us. Like they got us married here so they can have a labor, in-house labor, in the form of wives, in the form of daughter-in-law. Okay, and I think this is also again which falls under the labor exploitation angle. But then that moment I realized that how this story actually opened, gave me a perspective that okay, there are people are not only trafficked for one reason, and as long as you are alive, I think a human body has multiple purpose, and that's why there's so much of demand. And human trafficking is one of the global crime with gaining maximum profit. And so after, as soon as we finished this investigation, and it got released in 2020-21, and soon COVID hit. And that moment we were like, we all know we were under the like we were inside our homes, all trapped, all restrictions at place, travel restrictions. But despite that, we receive information that how Indians were traveling illegally to some of the European countries. In our case, we found Italy, for that matter, and because of the COVID situation, laborers and people were started to leave, and but at the same time, the Italian farmers, the entrepreneurs needed the labor to function, to continue their work. And that lead to a huge amount of migration, illegal migration, of people being trafficked to countries like Portugal, or to Italy. And we realized that that despite we were like quite surprised to find out that despite there's so much travel restrictions, how they managed to travel, because we were talking to this victim who was part of this 200 group of people who were about to travel to Portugal via Serbian routes when the restrictions were at place. And they were all going to work in farmlands, somewhere in Spain, somewhere in Portugal, somewhere in Italy, somewhere in Romania. And this guy actually lost hundreds and thousands of dollars to the traffickers, plus his passports were seized. So that's when he decided to be a whistleblower and help us investigate this entire journey. And that's when we came out with this investigation, the part 3, which we released uh, this year. So this we in this investigation we explain how the Serbia's visa on arrival policy for Indians especially were exploited so far by the travel agents. Again, travel agents, these are actually traffickers, are smugglers who under the garb of travel agents, or job seekers or job providers, always exploit or profit out of these people, and always sell them a lie or a dream that does not translate into reality. And so when some of these people we met and they were about to like travel to Portugal via Serbia, we managed to meet them. We like documented them. And once uh, so this all this happened last year, okay. And all these people were supposed to reach to Portugal. In one of the cases, I tried to convince someone who sold off his land, everything, and his parents were living in Gurudwara, in Sikh temple, okay, because they sold off whatever little land they had, to pay the traffickers, and decided and moved to Gurudwara Sikh temple to live, and that was really heartbreaking for me. And I tried to convince that person why he should not be traveling, but he was so motivated and convinced by the traffickers, and he thought that he's definitely going to have a very good job and eventually he'll be able to help his family. He decided to flee, but as he told me, the trafficker promised that he will be traveling via Serbia. So from here he'll be going to Dubai, from Dubai to Serbia, and Serbia he'll be directly taking a flight to Portugal. But what happened is that the moment he landed in Dubai, he was taken into captivity for weeks. Okay, and that's when he realized, okay, I am not making it to Portugal, I'm not going to Serbia. And he started giving me information. Okay, I think you were right. I think these people are lying. These people are actually are traffickers. They are not travel agents. And but he was trapped. And in back in India, among the Punjabi community, it's a cultural thing to go to abroad and settle down. And for this, they sell lands, and they take. And if you go and visit Punjab, you'll see every other person is in huge debt. Okay, and it's because it's a cultural thing to go abroad and settle down. And what happened when you go through this journey, nobody talks about openly, because it's a matter of shame back at home. So he could not disclose that how he landed up in that situation, and that he will not be able to now make it to Portugal. And but I was communicating between him and his family back in India, and he would tell me, do not tell my wife or sister that I'm stuck, because it's a matter of pride for them that I'm the only one who's going abroad now. So they should not have any idea about the situation. And okay, so every time the sister and family would call, I would fail to respond. I would lie. So I would say, I think he's fine. I'll say this, and I like, I'll try to have minimal conversation. Or respond through text that he's fine, he's safe. That's all. That he started in October 2022, okay, to go to Portugal. And you know what? He was flown through various countries. And then in this year, in March 2023, he finally could have a destination. And it is again not Portugal, but somewhere in US. So it took him months, to reach a destination. Okay. And right now he's under so much of debt because he paid initially, he already paid 1800,000, I think, which is like 18 lakh in Indian rupees. And now he has a debt over hundreds of thousands, okay. And he doesn't know what to do, because where he is right now there is no job, and there is so much of migrants coming from not only from India, but from other South Asian countries. And because of that issue, not only he but every other migrant is finding difficult to have a job or a livelihood, or even housing for that matter. We have this example from this guy in Portugal, who traveled last year, and he told us that there is so much of fight now for housing. Okay, that people are renting the beds for hours to the migrants. Okay, because that's the situation right now. Some of them are choosing to sleep on the street. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Yeah, very, very difficult situation. And I mean, it resonates with some of the things we discussed last week and earlier this week. So this really falls into patterns of what we would call unfair or abusive recruitment. So as Pari um, has shown clearly, a lot of these workers um, are, expecting from labor migration to obviously have a better situation, but to have access to these labor migration opportunities are victim of unscrupulous individuals. And then there is the challenges in the countries of destination. And so, I mean, it's really impressive to see the diversity of stories and how this has become your dominant your dominant beat. Before we go to the cross-border part, because we can see, for example, in the stories that are here, that most of these stories have been done by several journalists, so you were not alone in producing them. We can see that for the one on Serbia, you work with two other journalists, one who has actually a name which seems Serbian or from the region. So this is exactly what we want to discuss afterwards, this kind of cross-border collaboration across the corridor. Um, um, it's interesting to note also how we discussed with Ana Santos last week, finding the appropriate sources, working with these different challenging sources. It's interesting to see that through your work, you've been able to establish very, very strong ties with survivors and victims. And that some of them actually want to transform their situation of abuse into a situation where they denounce, I think, by the way, that you have a slide on this, like how victims turn into whistleblowers in a way.
Right, right. Uh, so it's so interesting that how the one story, the part one of investigation, which is started in 2020-21 again, lead to two more investigation. Now we are on a third with Portugal. Okay, besides the India Germany investigation, which you are also part of. You are mentoring us for the under journalism fund. That's the fourth. That's a different one. So yes. Interestingly, so what happened, how the sources become how the survivors or victims become our sources, is that in 2020-21, this one person who traveled in 2019 right before COVID hit, he went to the traffickers to get a job in Italy, but as soon as the COVID started, he realized that there's so much of exploitation, he will not be able to have the same income as was promised, and plus his passport was taken immediately, he was beaten up, he was not given food, and he was not expecting all the harassment at all. So he decided to flee from that farmland where he was put in, somewhere in the southeast Rome, side of Italy, around near Rome. I think it's a farm somewhere in Agropontino, the Lazio region in Italy, and he fled from that farm one day and somehow managed to reach the Indian embassy. Okay, and then Indian embassy sent him back on a white passport. Okay, so he became our first source of information. We interacted with him for months. He was already so much traumatized because in one of the situation he was put in a delivery box. Okay, and transported from one country to another. Okay, to evade the police security check. And he while he was narrating, he told us how one of the migrants or co-fellows was gasping for breath, and if he had been in the same box for another for like few more minutes, he would have died. His friend would have died. So he was giving, sharing all those information. It was quite disturbing. And then we realized that during the conversation that how not only men but women are also part of the journey. So far we have been seeing that people talking about how Indian men have been exploited, the migrants have been exploited in the labor farms of Italy or European countries, but there was no information about women being also targeted or exploited, in the same manner, or being trafficked. Because when it comes to women in India, it's, again, as I said, it's a matter of shame. So everyone tries to hush up the matter. So that person, you know, connected us to all the women victims and survivors. And after gathering all the information, we flew to Italy, to the Lazio region, and we started, interviewing and documenting all the survivors and women. But we were not we failed to, gather the information that we received before flying, because of COVID situation, and many women decided not to come in front and come on the record. And whenever we do investigation, we strictly maintain, respect consent of others, and so we did not force, and we, with whatever information we had, and plus the government also issued a lot of, the security problems for us. So we only had 120 hours window to travel to Italy and come back, do an investigation and come back. So it was quite a tight and very hectic schedule for us. But the real information started flowing in after we came back to India. So while I was in Italy, I started, sharing my email ID and my phone number among the, Punjabi, groups. Okay, we went to Gurudwara, we went to the community, we started starting interacting with women, and started sharing my number. In case you find some cases, in case you find some situation, just let me know, or you want to share anything or vent out, just feel free to reach out to me. And when I landed in India, we started receiving, a balances of information, and that's when we connected. We got in touch with so many victims who were with the traffickers at the moment, traveling from one destination to another, at the same time sending information. But you know what? It was such a, dire situation, because A, they were with the traffickers, B, they're communicating in front of them. So we were also thinking, what if they get caught? What will happen to their lives? So at one point, we thought that we have to, like, train them, give them some basic information to save themselves. So one, we asked them to download Signal, and Signal was so helpful for us at that moment. So they would communicate through Signal, then they will, delete the app. Then whenever they get network, they will take a video, or they will send it to us, or, the GPS locations. And then we like keep a track on their, informations. At the same time, we had, their the information of their family members. Okay, so in case, because as I said, we always respect of their concern, and those people were so hopeful that, okay, we'll make it to some destination and we'll be able to, like, return the money that our parents borrowed and whatever. So so this is how it started. All our victims, our voices become our sources. And because we decided to give, time to them to open up, actually the trust that built between them and us help us to, get into many more, investigation and cases. And I think what we do not consider while doing investigation is that our sources bear the most. It's, who are at the risk of everything and does the maximum on behalf of journalists. They also become our, uh, translator, or, and but I think they should be duly paid for their time as well. So that's when we came up with this idea to do cross-border collaborative investigation. So we also decided to pay two of our sources were integral part of our investigation. They're still very much part of our investigation. And thanks to Journalism Fund for that, because they did not argue with us, and they decided, okay, they should be also thoroughly paid, some stipend. And we paid them some grant. And not only that, we also we had a mentorship. So Journalism Fund provides mentoring. Okay, you are a mentor now for our food project. So during that first project, we had two of our sources also part of our mentorship. So they had a post-trauma, reporting, how to, like, report or speak with other survivors, or how to take care of their own mental health, while putting themselves in the risk. So we also get them all the training. So yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite peculiar, because it's true that, I mean, traditionally, the not necessarily the rule, but the practice in journalism is not, is to have kind of a distant relationship with the sources, or, I mean, at least, not get into any economic relationship with them out of, the risk that by receiving money, the sources might, change their story or adjust their story to make it fit the narrative maybe that they think the journalist is expecting from them. In the very peculiar case that you're talking about, which unfortunately isn't so small in terms of numbers, because trafficking victims from India, in the case of migration, can amount to a significant number of people. These people are almost like people supporting a police investigation or helping you access very complex information. And so, I mean, your approach is one that I think is worth respecting. I know you have prepared some general advice. Maybe you want to walk us through kind of those general advice that you want to share with the audience with regards to working with survivors and sources and people that have been involved in these stories.
Yes, sure. I think one thing that I have repeatedly saying that you may be not an patient person in your personal space, in your personal life, but when it comes to investigative journalism, you have to really patient with your sources. And I'm one of those people who are very impatient, like, but my work has taught me to be very patient with my sources. And if they like decides to like withdraw from any story or not to come on record, or after giving all the information they like going to withdraw or say no, we don't want to want the story to be published, so we have actually cancelled, we have literally dropped our stories. We have always maintained and have respected that. And so I think what we always find, we I don't know about other journalists, but in India, what we see is that most survivors or victims, the voices always complain of one thing. People who have been interviewed earlier, like the journalists are so impatient. They're always in a hurry to grab something. They would try to fit information in our like words in our mouth, or they would be so impatient. They would say, okay, take your time to grieve or then come back. But technically, they would like the very next moment they will push us, put pressure us to like to speak. So I think we have to understand that we need to be very sensitive. A story is important, but then we also have to respect the survivors' voices. And in all of our case, I'm so glad that all of my team members are so empathetic and are so kind. I think more than me, I think, and very patient. So every time we meet survivors, we not only approach them as a journalist, we have a like very humanistic approach with them. And it's our patience, sometimes months. In one cases we had year-long wait with this one survivor, okay, and that person today is like it's so close, and it's like he trusts us so much today. And that's I think that's what we have gained, the trust of our survivors. And the patience is important. If you do not have the patience, I think you will not be able to do a very good story. Forget the story. I think what is important, that the issue is reported ethically and factually. And for that, I think the patience is very important. Second is consent. I think we talk about consent in the room, but nobody talks about the informed consent, where there's a like very thin line between the two. So we always tell them, ask them, do you have do I have your consent to report or to take your video or photo to the XYZ? But we all never tell them that once the story is out, you might also have a repercussion from your community or from the government or from the traffickers. The immediate threat that he or she might receive once the story is out. So I think that's where we try to manipulate as a journalist so that we get our stories and how things are done. And that is why the informed consent is very much important. And we make sure that we tell all the sources, okay, this once the story is out, maybe your friend who knows the story, if she reads, might point out, okay, this is this woman or this man. So or they might come looking for you. So are you ready for all of this? So these are the like we are not sure that this might happen, but these are the probabilities. So we want to like aware you for that. So we always try to do it. And if any woman, anyone try think that they want to withdraw, so we respect, we do not argue, we say okay, fine, no problem. uh Respect time, I think, yes. Patient and times are goes hand in hand. I think you should wait for them to respect their time. Whenever they're ready to speak, you should be available, not only when not when you want to speak, they should be ready. I think this is what we have learned, and their time is valuable. Value their time. Do not give them fake hope. What we see in India is that there are so many well established, I would not say well established, they're very famous journalists, and I don't find famous as a very good complimenting word, because I think journalists are not supposed to be famous, they're supposed to be doing the good work. So they're very famous, well-known, award-winning journalists in India who always sells fake dreams and hopes to sources in order to gain information. And I have faced the repercussion of their work, Charles. I have been in this one state in West Bengal, and to meet these the parents of the child trafficking victim. And the mother got so mad at me the moment she knew that I'm a journalist. You know what she said? She said, you people, you women, always play this woman card. Come to us, manipulate, and get the information out in the name of consent, and then you exploit us. And what after that? And she literally named that journalist, and I was surprised. Okay, then it took me so hard to convince her I am not like her, because once an impression is made, you cannot help. They are vulnerable people. Once they are hurt, they are hurt. So this has happened twice with me, that someone else, a wrongdoing, we journalists, me and a group of friends, have faced the repercussions. So I think, please be very honest with your work. So and that's, again, this falls under the journalistic code of ethics, I think. Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this very precious advice. I think you had another set of, you've referred a little bit to this, so
Yeah.
you see sources almost as contributors to your story in a way, and it has to do with the very peculiar nature of the work that you're doing. So you've shared with us how you try to get access, if you're asking things for sources that goes beyond just their testimony, but following up the story and helping you have access to specific information, trying to secure some sort of a stipend for them. You mentioned the Journalism Fund. Just so everyone is familiar with this, Journalism Fund is a Brussels-based organization that is today really at the forefront of supporting journalism, quality journalism, notably on the topic of labor migration, and notably on the topic of labor exploitation from Asia to Europe. So they have a very, very strong body of work that goes mainly through grants and mentoring, where they support journalists like Pari to be able to produce stories and have the adequate resources, because let's be honest, the media ecosystem in India or in other Asian countries doesn't always give the resources that journalists need to be able to investigate these stories completely. And you mentioned how you go quite far in terms of training the sources or giving them access to trainings on mental health or other things that might be useful for them. So I think this is very, very valuable information. I see we're already quite advanced in the conversation. I maybe wanted you to comment a little bit about your cross-border work as well.
Yes. So I think, yeah, as I mentioned here on the slide, as all of you can see, a cross-border human trafficking or a cross-border story is all about the good teamwork. And I'm so glad that that I have really good, amazing journalists from across the European countries. We have one partner in Italy, one in Portugal, one in Serbia, one in Brazil, so one in Germany as well. So, and all of them are so ethical, I would say. They're so ethical and good with their work, and that's how I like to term them. And so we not only give a space to the journalists, we also try to always have researchers who are experts on migrations or trafficking issues, so, and make them part of our investigation. And we also have photographers, illustrators, researchers, NGO person, lawyers. In our case, we have two lawyers this time. So we always try to, make a team of different important stakeholders. Besides having journalists, I think that's give a very bit better perspective to an investigation. So it also help us to, know and learn more about a subject. At the same time, it ease the work. It divides the work and the role, and put less burden, mental burden on each of the team members. So in all of my projects, we have not only journalists, but we also have researchers, lawyers, illustrators, sources for sure. And when I say sources, they are not primarily the victims or survivors. They are also local journalists, regional journalists, who are totally cut off from the mainstream, who for some reason, safety and security, do not like to be named. We like to provide them opportunities. We like to make them part of our investigations. We provide them stipend as well as us, as well as training. And we so when we work with a survivor as well, we make sure the survivor is has enough, has a support from important bodies, for example NGOs. So most of the sources, we were initially victims, later become survivors, are connected to NGOs. And we do not only end up doing a story for, like, sake of doing it, because we have to do, got a grant, and we'll be now internationally recognized, so we have to finish this project. But no, in all of our cases, we have always tried to provide anybody who have sought ask for help. We have tried to connect them with lawyers. In the Italian investigation case, we found many women who are a victim of domestic violence as of even today, and they are in touch with. We got them connected with lawyer in India. In the second investigation, we have this two survivors who somehow made it, one to Portugal and one to US. We are connecting them to an NGO so they can seek help. And last year, there was a guy who was stuck with the traffickers. His passport was not released, so he received some help from Spain. So we always try to not only do the story, take their listen to the stories and make a report, but also try to connect them with necessary help. So yes, and
And I
yeah.
think you've designed kind of a methodology. You might want to walk us through quickly on this. So that's the cross-border methodology.
Yeah, I think this time when I was in Sweden for the Global Investigative Journalism Conference, we came across this conversation that many journalists, especially in Southeast Asia, find it very difficult to have a collaborator in other countries, because you don't know how to find them. Sometimes social media does not help. But so there are like platforms I want to share, that platforms like Journalism Fund. If you're looking for a cross-border collaborator, there's a option in the Journalism Fund Europe website, where you can actually look for a specific partner country wise. You can not necessarily have to do the project with Journalism Fund, but you can pick one for any other project. Okay, so we have that. Then we have host wire, for that matter, host writer, I think. Yes, host writer is very, very helpful if you want to you're looking for a cross-border partner. GIGN, for that matter, or always use hashtag journal request. I'm sure you all would know, and you all are so good with your work. So this also helps sometime on social media. If you have a request, and then along with that you write hashtag journal request, you get a lot of help. So these are the three important, I think, platform that, as I know, to find your cross-border partners: Journalism Fund Europe, host writer, and yes, Twitter, for that matter. Teaming with right expert, as I already mentioned, that do not limit your work to journalists. Also have team up with experts. Like, for example, we have Charles with you for this investigation. Then we have lawyers. Then we have an NGO person. We have researcher, somebody who has done PhD on trafficking. So we have like network of people who could be resourceful to us. So do not limit your cross-border project to only journalists. Have more experts, in your team. Grants and fellowships, there are many, many grants and fellowship. You can go to GIGN platform, the Global Investigative Network platform, or EYESNet. look for these platforms. If you want, I can share all the links and with Charles, and Charles can forward it to all of you. So there are many bodies. So now in today's time, I think it is very easier to do a cross-border project. All you need to be, be at the right platform, I think, to find your partner. So yes, and reporting trainings. Yes, I think for any investigative journalism work, I think you need to be more, besides your passion, your ethics, your moral grounds. What is important is training. So in India, it's like a very, it's like, fantasy to do investigative work. It's like an adventurous work. You see, if you speak with people who are like emerging journalists, they would say, "Oh, you cover human trafficking. This is so amazing. This is so adventurous." So I want to tell people that this is not adventurous, and it's risk. You are always at the risk, and that's why we need to have trainings and mentorship while doing in covering sensitive stories like that. And it helps you to like protect yourself, protect your sources, protect your immediate people, which you often forget while doing investigation, that your immediate people, your family, friends, partner could be targeted. In our case, that has happened with me and my friends. And so that is why training, reporting trainings comes in play and helps. Legal support, I think after every important story, you should get it checked by a lawyer, one. And before flying, I would say not many media houses, almost all media houses always ignore this part, that if the journalist suppose face any repercussion on the ground, will you be in a position to retrieve that person or provide any help with legal support? So I think that is very important. So always have a conversation with your editors, or have a separate conversation with a lawyer, yourself, so that in case you face in a situation you could be intercepted, or your devices could be seized. There should be someone. I think I would say in our cases, do not share information with your family members, but to a lawyer, where you are traveling, where you are going, who you are meeting, so that that person can help you out. And along with the embassy, inform to the embassy. Okay, and protection and safety plan, including offline digital security. So currently, I am a fellow of Reporters Without Borders Digital Security, fellowship, and this fellowship has been an eye-opening and mind-blowing for me. I think every newsroom should now train journalists on digital security. We have been ignoring this, thinking, okay, we don't need digital security. We might not be attacked, but if you are someone who covers intense, investigative stories covered related to politics, corruption, human rights, you should, I think, be trained for digital security. And for this, we have Reporters Without Borders. They have their programs. You can apply, look into their programs, and they're very, very effective and very helpful. You can secure your devices. More than that, you can secure yourself and your sources and your family and your immediate people. And this fellowship has been a boon for me in this context, because we were kind of targeted last year, and we were like ignoring all the small red flags so far, and we realized, okay, no, okay, one need to be very famous or vocal. You could be targeted for your work if you are like investigating something like this. So that is why digital security training is very important.
Thanks a lot
um
for this
oh, I
advice.
think I missed this
Go
last
ahead.
point, that post reporting trauma we have for the DART center. I think three factors are very important: legal support, training, and post-reporting trauma. Help. I think everyone who covers sensitive, human rights issues, face the trauma, for long. And I have had had this trauma for very like. I realized very late that okay, I could be affected, as well. And I initially I used to think, okay, no, nothing can affect me, nothing can bother me. Okay, I'm fine. But no, I think every newsroom should also start addressing the post-reporting trauma of journalists, provide them help, provide them psychosocial support, pay for their mental health, uh, what do you call, sessions. Yes, I think it's very important. And in all of our fellowships, we are lucky to have that support. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And we'll be sharing the slides. I've put in the chat some of the links that Pari has referred to. So the Journalism Fund, the RSF Digital Security fellowships. So those are very valuable elements. And I mean, Pari, maybe one last thing. And I mean, if there are any questions or comments with regards to Pari's presentation, don't hesitate to raise your hand or put them in the chat. One of the reasons maybe, as you were saying, you've been kind of targeted, or you've been receiving some threats or things like this, has been the fact that you've also, aside from your reporting work, have been actively communicating. You might want to say a word about the campaign that you have launched in India to raise awareness about trafficking.
Yes, I think some people say that, activism and journalism is, is problematic. Just stick to journalism and do not try to be in activism. I think both go hand in hand, and activism is the main, foundation of your journalism. And I think I just cannot withdraw myself from that. So after in India, what we realized in India being a transit source and destination country for trafficking, is a hub of trafficking. We do not have enough awareness. I went to Thailand for a trip, and I was amazed to see there were helpline numbers being flash on screens and advertised for people, if they want to inform, report a matter. And when I came back India, I realized why we don't have such a thing in India. Why people cannot, why there's no mechanism or a way or helpline number to report on trafficking, or if you come across a case, or if you feel yourself a victim or a witness, trafficking, child labor, labor exploitations, or anything. So that's when we launched this campaign last year in December 2nd, that and now we carry this campaign every month. So what we do is that this is in two forms. One, we pick up a spot in New Delhi, India, and stand with our placards with informations and phone numbers of this NGO Manubal, who is an anti-human trafficking organizations, and they've been looking into cross-border cases so far, especially between India, Nepal, India, and South African countries. And I have been part of this project. And we are also looking into the cases between India and South Africa at the moment. So what we do is that we send with the placards, and we do not go after people like, hey, do you have a minute? We want to know about the campaign. No, we stand silently for hours. People come, whoever's interested, whatever they ask with the queries, or what is trafficking for the matter. People do not know that there's a word called trafficking. This is so surprising. And we have been through that campaign. We have been able to help some people so far. We even rescued one girl from railway station when she was getting traffic from one state to another, and the traffic was on the call with her. She was a minor girl, and somehow she lost her phone, and that's when she, the entire incident came into picture. And someone saw us at the same time. We were also running a campaign simultaneously when the girl was in the station, and someone saw us with the campaign and took the picture of the number and called us. Hey, there's a girl, abandoned girl who would like to check, and then we rescued her. So this campaign is one is Silent March, and another one is I run an episode. It's again named as #NoHumanTrafficking YouTube series. That YouTube channel is actually part of YouTube Creators Program for Independent Journalists, in which I and 48 other journalists were part of that fellowship. And I launched my first human trafficking documentary channel. It is quite at a very nascent stage right now, but I make sure to run this series where I interview people who have worked on trafficking issues with experts, NGO people, journalists, cross-border experts, and try to release information how people can report this matter and who they should be contacting in the time of crisis. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Pari. First of all, for all the work that you're doing. So, I mean, I'll share the presentation with everyone, your contact details as well. So that's really, really kind of you. I mean, I don't know if there are any questions here. Some of you are from Southern Africa, so you might have heard Pari mentioning the fact that, trafficking and issues related to labor migration of Indians to Southern Africa is also an issue. Some of you are in the Balkans. That's also a pressing issue. or some of you are based in South Asia. So, I mean, I hope that this session was informative. First of all, on the reality, it's true that when we think about trafficking, maybe India isn't the first country that comes to mind, but that is also related to the fact that there has been maybe a scarcity of reporting on this topic or of engagement, maybe, as you have mentioned, you know, the lack of hotlines and public awareness on this issue. So it's really impressive to see all the work that you are doing on this. I don't know if anyone wanted to ask a question to Pari. Now is the time. Afterwards, we will free her because she's actually just in the break of her training, and so we had promised to let her get back to her training after.
Also, if anyone is looking for cross-border, support, so they can reach out to me. I can provide them any kind of help or information they're looking for. We have currently project with between Asia and, as I said, Africa, Asia with European Union, Asia with Balkan region, and Southeast Asia. So any kind of information or anything if you want, you can feel free to reach out to Charles or to me, whichever is convenient. So yeah.
Yes, Brenda, I see you raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Pari. You have shared very good stories with us, and I just wanted to check because I had, I think, somewhere where you were saying you are also working very close with, very soon you'll be working with South Africa, and I wanted to check if you are doing any work with journalists in South Africa, and if you are, what kind of stories are you reporting or have you had being reported in South Africa around labor migration or child trafficking or women trafficking in South Africa? Thank you.
Okay, so my upcoming story is about African women being trafficked to India. And as I said, I only cover trafficking. So this is the story that we are looking into right now. And going further, we are planning to do a joint investigation, cross-border investigations. So what we see at the moment is that trafficking among women, especially single mothers, is very common, and they are coming to they are being trafficked to India under the false pretext of jobs, good job, decent job, and some are even students who are coming here to study, but those universities do not exist in reality when we investigate. So these are the challenges that we have been coming across from the African region. So yes, if I have answered your question.
In this case, in comparison to the stories that you were talking about, for example, in the Balkans, where you are looking at Indians going to Europe in search of job opportunities and being sometimes deceived by travel agents, as you call them, or recruiters or intermediaries. Your current interest in labor migration from Southern Africa has to do with India as a country of destination of possible trafficking victims. So that's also, I think, something that's really interesting that we're seeing is that, as you're saying, India can be, once journalists become specialized in this issue, they can either look at patterns of exploitation of their fellow nationals going abroad and being exploited and deceived and a victim of unfair recruitment. But they can also look at the question of trafficking from the perspective of people coming from outside. And it's true, India is a very, it's a growing economy with a lot of inequalities. So on one hand, it's a country that is, if I can say so, producing vulnerable prospective migrants, but it's also a country that is attracting people and that can attract people in the context of trafficking.
Right, exactly. I mean, Punjab is the biggest example for the matter because Punjab was known as the Green Revolution state at one point of time, with the exporter of wheat and rice to countries like UK, US, or in Kuwait, so many countries. And today they are facing so much challenges because of climate change, and they are having people. The Punjabi migrants are so much in demand in the farmlands of European Union, in European countries, in Italy, because Punjabis are known to know the heart and soul of agriculture, the crop. And but what we see is that other people coming from different countries or region to work in their land, and whereas the same the regional people are moving out. And overall in India, if you see that people are migrating in the name of jobs, but at the same time we are seeing that from like we have this so many people coming from South Africa, um, Myanmar, Bangladesh to India, and being, to seek employment or opportunity or livelihood, but they're being exploited in different sectors, and these things are not being addressed. So yeah, we see this, you can call this a chain reaction, the kind of a chain reaction that we are seeing in India right now.
Pari, maybe one last question. I see that Ida in the chat is asking the question of editors, because I mean, you're talking from your experience as a journalist, but as we can understand it, the stories that you're covering, they require a lot of time, maybe resources. Are editors receptive to these type of stories? She's asking, are there any trainings for editors? What has been your experience in this? I know you've been recently invited to speak in important, journalism conferences, where I assume editors kind of also inform themselves. But what is your take on, the support that editors are receiving or giving on these type of stories?
I think at the same conference in Sweden, some people raise this, why we don't have why don't have enough editors coming to the conference, being part of panel discussions, or training, sessions, because what we see is the journalists are getting being trained, but they're not being able to, somewhere pass on the, that same expertise, or make the things pass through the editors, because editors are unaware. Some editors are so unaware about the current situation. For example, when we were dealing with the Serbian story, one of the publications had no idea why India is so important in the context of trafficking and labor migration. Okay, and we had to argue for like days. And then we realized that some editors are like so unaware of the situation. They need to be trained on migration issues, with cross-border migration issues, cross-border trafficking issues. And I think since I have not been an editor myself, but I'm sure there are training programs for editors as well, where they can be part of such sessions. I'll definitely look for it and share with you, Charles, so that you can forward it to them. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Ida, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank to Pari Saikia for this. And I used to work as a journalist, and I know it's so hard to convince the editors of the ideas and some stories. And it's always like, I work in the daily newspapers, so the deadlines are much different and much very very short. But it was very hard to convince that there are some stories that need more time and more effort, and that are important. So thank you for the answer. Thank you for sharing this with us today.
Thank you so much, Aida. I hope this discussion that we had would help all of you, and I'm sure we all journalists need to be helping hand for each other. And what we see is that we are becoming so competitive, in today's time, that we always overlook everyone. But whereas we are a very small community of journalists but doing this work, and we need to help each other. And I think we all should come together, and always try to provide help and support, or any kind of, or we can be each other's, what to say, psychosocial supports, provide, comfort, at least, if nothing. Yes, I'm glad that you like this session so much. Thank you, Aida.
Thank you, Pari. And I know, we're running a bit behind schedule, especially for you. So I want to thank you, Pari, and tell you that, you're free to go back to your training. You're already 40 minutes late. So I hope your instructor will be nice with you, but I really want to thank you. I mean, if we want editors to get interested in these stories, the first thing we need is actually good stories to convince them that these stories are worth pursuing. And that's clearly something that you've been working on very actively in the past couple of years. And I think that there is a growing understanding that this issue is really a very, very big problem. You've talked to us about so many different situations, Indians going to the Balkans, to Portugal, to Romania, to people from South Africa going to India, people going to the US. I mean, there is just so much of this happening, let alone talking about the issues also within South Asia and trafficking between Myanmar and India or within India. So it's really, really a very, very big topic. It's fascinating to see people like you put so much energy into it and being so transparent also about the hardships that it implies. So we're really supportive of your work. Pari has said several times, anyone who's interested, don't hesitate to reach out to her. She's shared her contact details. So now it's really up to you if you want to follow up. And yeah, that's it. So Pari, you can leave anytime and I'll just take the remaining 20 minutes to debrief. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Charles. Thank you so much, Marianne, and for giving me this platform to share my work and my experiences. Thank you so much, and all the best to all the fellows. Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, Pari. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So, I mean, this is part of a series of testimonies that we think are useful for you. The next one around, I'm preparing a pre-recorded interview with a journalist from Uganda. So the idea is also to connect you with different realities. So Anna last week talked to us about the situation in the Philippines. We've decided to choose some countries that have very, very big labor migration related stories. So Philippines obviously is historically a very, very important country of origin. India has been for a long time a country of internal mobility. There is more than 100 million internal migrants in India who sometimes take on journeys that are really, really long and difficult and face a lot of challenges, but it's increasingly a country of destination and a country of origin of international migrants as well. So we thought that through Pari's work, it was really interesting for you to get familiar with that. So next session will be pre-recorded. Also because we're going to be speaking with a journalist that has been doing undercover work, looking at migration from Uganda to the Middle East. She has migrated herself, quite a fascinating experience that she's had, and so that's going to be the next testimony that you'll get to discover. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wanted to share their reactions or if you have any comments that you want to make on the interaction we've had with Pari. Now is a good moment to do that. Otherwise, I'll just take a couple of minutes to run you through some additional guidance after today's session. Chief, I see you're sharing a story. Do you want to take the mic and talk about it?
Yeah, Charles, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so yeah. So the experience today, the journalist who just shared her experience, I mean, I think it's just confirming for me, at least personally, that this is a real problem because just this past week, I've seen two stories of, sorry, the second one is actually, okay, let me just, the second one was actually about Malaysian women who, sorry, I shared the wrong link there. was about Malaysian women who have been trafficked to Peru. So, I mean, I was really shocked about that. And then this particular one was about Nepalese workers who were being exploited in Saudi Arabia by multinational companies like McDonald's, Intercontinental Hotel, you know. So I just never realized until I've been in this course the extent of this problem, you know. And that's just a comment that I wanted to make, that I think this course has just really opened my eyes to how big of a problem migration is. Like how big of a problem like these like middle players, how like this story about these Peruvians, about these Nepalese, they were all these recruitment agencies that lied to them that they were going to work for Amazon, for McDonald's, for Crown Plaza Hotel. And then when they got to Saudi Arabia, all their documentation was taken away. They couldn't even go on, like even work break. They couldn't even go on a work break. So the stories are so harrowing, and I've just realized that like this is a fundamental problem that really needs to be communicated about. Thank you, Charles.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, you're saying several things here is, I mean, I don't think, I don't want you to believe that, you know, you were maybe in the dark and because you were not paying attention and now because you're in this course, all of a sudden you realize that it's happening everywhere. This has a lot to do actually with this course, in a sense that there is, if the ITC-ILO is offering a course on communicating labor migration, is because a lot of people are getting an increased understanding that we need to basically, we inform ourselves through reporting and communication. If people are not equipped to tell these stories don't come out. And if these stories don't come out, we don't know. And because we are realizing that more and more of these stories are coming out, there is an effort to train more and more people so that more stories come out and hopefully we can put an end to it. This first story that you shared, I think, is really interesting. I wanted to say a word about it because I've also come across it. I know Pramod Acharya quite well, who is the Nepali journalist who co-produced this story. Again, as we just saw with Pari, this is a cross-border story. Katie McHugh has been reporting extensively from the Middle East. And so she teamed up with Pramod to get this kind of dual perspective on the story. Katie is maybe a little bit more familiar with the brands that are involved, with the you know, implications for businesses of being tied to this type of abuse. And on the other hand, Pramod is from Nepal, and so he has a lot of the cultural sensitivity to be able to understand, reach out, engage with Nepali sources of information for this story. So their combination is really critical, because maybe if Katie was trying to do this story by herself, she would have a very hard time building bonds with the Nepali sources of information. And if Pramod was doing this by himself, he might have difficulties to really understand what's at stake with the companies that are involved. And this is part of another body of work. So we talked about Journalism Fund. Ana Santos, who we spoke to last week, has been supported by Journalism Fund as well. Pramod has been supported by Journalism Fund. This is part of a body of investigation that is called Trafficking Inc., Trafficking Incorporated, which is an ECIJ project. So you can find the information here. Let me share this screen. So the Trafficking Inc. Investigation is a very, very big partnership under the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which brings together a number of different institutions. You have Reuters, you have NBC, you have the Washington Post. Actually, Katie is a journalist for the Washington Post. You have the Guardian, hence the fact that this story has been published by the Guardian. You have the University of California, who is also embedding this in journalism education. You have reporting networks from the Arab states, the Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism, ARIJ, and you have the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. So a very, very big partnership, which leads me to share you a couple of additional resources, by the way. For those who are interested in cross-border journalism and also in the context of the Arab states, tell you that the topic of the next forum in the Arab state is going to be on cross-border journalism. So this is a forum happening in Amman, cross-border collaboration in a fragmented world. So that resonates very much with what Pari was saying. And some of you may have seen this, but recently I facilitated a webinar specifically on the topic of cross-border labor migration reporting. So we'll be sharing with you this link as well. I'll put them right now in the chat so that you can have a look at these different resources if you want. And maybe the last thing, I agree with you that sometimes we're really surprised by the distance, and the scope of some of these stories. So you referred to this story between Malaysia and Peru. For those of you who are not completely familiar with their geography, it's kind of incredible when you come to think of it, of the distance between these two countries. So Peru is a Latin American country located over here. And we are talking of a trafficking story from Malaysia, which is here, all the way to Peru. So, I mean, this is across the South Pacific Ocean. This is some of the, I don't know what is the distance. We can look at it. From Malaysia to Peru, we're talking of, by foot, obviously it's not possible. We cannot calculate walking directions, I understand. But it's really, really, really a very, very, very big, a very big distance. And so you can imagine how challenging it is to bring people from Malaysia to Peru, but also how challenging it is to rescue trafficking victims from Malaysia to Peru. So that is really, really interesting. And thanks a lot, Chief Kemusimba, for sharing that story with us. I see that it's almost time. I don't know if we have one last question or one last comment that anyone wants to share. Otherwise, we can leave it here and we meet again next week. Anything else? Any hand raised or comments in the chat?
Thank you, Charles. I don't see any more comments. It was a very intense session. Very intense psychologically. Very interesting for the rest. Very interesting.
Yeah, you shared your comment, Marion. You're in Italy, I live in France. A lot of us can live in these countries and be completely blind to these problems. it's true that if journalists were not reporting these stories, many of us would not know, because even if it's happening sometimes in our countries, these are not things that we see. Michael, I see you want to say one last word. Go ahead, please, and then we'll close this session.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. It's morning here in Nigeria. So I just wanted to say that very importantly, even though I have an idea of the critical role that journalists play in trying to create narrative and perspective around the issue of migration, this course has really, especially from the facilitators that have spoken, Anna the other week, and the sister that spoke today, has really, given me a broader view of the very important role that journalists have to play. You were just saying, these issues are just all around us. But if journalists don't get to report these stories the way they are and in the proper way, people might not really get to understand the issues, how deep rooted they are. But I have to appreciate the depth and the resources and the time. She was just saying it took her 2 years to follow up on a story. It's just opened my mind to say, this takes a lot of time, to just report a single story. You are following up on a story, the resources, the time, the patience. It's something that, before now, some of us are not really used to getting that patience to follow up on the story. So, we just report the usual daily routine stories and not do follow up. So I think the course has really been very educative, and I really appreciate the resources and the personnel that have really, given us their presentation and share their experiences. I just needed to say that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Michael. We're happy to hear that it's useful, and we hope to continue. And it's been, it's informative for all of us. Mayo has been sharing her own, how it's been useful for her, informative for her as well. Each time I listen to Pari, I learn new things, and I'm quite fascinated. Also, there's something very Indian in her approach, going to the train station, standing without speaking. That resonates a lot with some historical movements in India of non-violent protest and things like this. And I think it's important for us to know that, okay, we have a common challenge. We have a challenge that ties us together, because labor migration is what ties Nigeria to Italy, to France, to other countries, because it's connecting our countries. But it's also good for us to know that people everywhere are trying to fight against these abuses, and that if we collaborate, we might be more effective in the way we address them. So that's kind of the main message for this week that I wanted to share with you. And so, yeah, you'll be hearing from us, from Miki, Mayo, and myself in the coming days with information about the rest of the program. Let's continue engaging on the platform. And thanks everyone for being here today and for engaging with us.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you to all of you, and see you next week. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.